Hello and welcome to News Up Now. I'm Bryan Thompson. We begin this edition with a protest between supporters and opponents of President Donald Trump set to take place in Berkeley this weekend. This is after the massive protest last month where it got bloody with damage and left 9 warrants. Berkeley police released last Wednesday pictures of 3 more people suspected of violence. In a YouTube video, organizers are calling the Saturday event Patriot Day. The police is prepared with different contingencies. The farmers market next to Civic Center Park has been canceled because the vendors and patrons might be at risk if a planned rally by militant Trump supporters, as well as their combative opponents, turns violent. We contacted one of the organizers, but we didn't get any response. In San Francisco, a woman was dragged off a Muni bus and robbed in the Fillmore last night. The Hood Line reports the victim, 30 years old, was on a bus when a suspect approached her. 9 other suspects then dragged her off the bus and punched her while taking her belongings. All the suspects are still at large and broken down into 4 boys and 6 girls. The victim is okay according to police. Anyone with information should call the police department's anonymous tip line at 415-575-4444. Once again, that is 415-575-4444. Now, in South America, almost 1/3 of Brazil's President Michel Temer's cabinet are under investigation. A day after a Supreme Court justice ordered corruption probes into 98 politicians, including legislators. Laura Freiberg asks, can the economy carry on with business as usual?
Just days after a major corruption investigation into dozens of Brazilian politicians was opened, and the headlines are hard to ignore. But the country's president is urging the government to do exactly that.
The judiciary will give the final word. This is what we have to give meaning to. We can never paralyze the government. We have to continue.
Almost 1/3 of Michel Temer's cabinet are now under inquiry in relation to a wider investigation that dozens of politicians allegedly helped a construction firm win lucrative contracts with the state-run oil company Petrobras in exchange for money.
This demonstrates that we are talking about a corrupt system that drains public resources and must be uncovered. These investigations have to go deep.
And the timing of the probe couldn't be worse. The government is trying to implement ambitious reform, including an overhaul of the pension system. Interest rates too were slashed this week as Brazil tries to tackle its worst recession in more than a century.
The Brazilian economy is still in a tricky situation. Inflation is very high, and surprisingly high when you consider that the Brazilian economy has shrunk by 8% over the last couple of years.
Temer has said he'll suspend any ministers charged with corruption, although no word if he'd do the same. He himself is under a separate investigation for illegal campaign financing.
Meanwhile, in Venezuela, protests still on the streets asking for freedom. As Silvia Antonioli reports, international diplomats call for new votes and investors to stay on the sidelines amid spiraling inflation and growing political instability.
Freedom is what these angry protesters are calling for. Freedom from what they say is an increasingly dictatorial government. This is the longest wave of protests in over 3 years, and the longer it goes, the more out of control it gets. Police firing rubber bullets and tear gas against the crowds. Students responding with rocks and whatever else they can find. These scenes show a supermarket being looted in the north of the country. And a young man died in protest-related violence last week. President Nicolas Maduro puts down what he calls pockets of violence to foreign pressures and the opposition.
These violent groups and the right, they represent the modern-day Antichrist. We will defeat them.
The social unrest was sparked by the ongoing economic crisis. The oil-producing nation was badly hit by falling crude prices. Triple-digit inflation and shortages of basic products are now the norm. Adding fuel to the fire, a political ban on the main opposition leader and an attempt to dissolve the National Assembly. Now international diplomats are calling for elections to restore full democracy.
But I think for now, investors will continue to stand aside essentially from investing in the country, and so until there is some degree of credibility from political and or monetary sources, I think the problems will remain relatively significant.
Investment starvation, though, is only likely to plunge the country even deeper into the vicious circle of hyperinflation and violent protests, suggesting a change of direction is needed, and quickly.
That'll do it for us. Thanks for watching. I'm Bryan Thompson. Be well.